once I saw the film, it was like I couldn't speak because it's like an experience. I know you've talked about how sometimes when you see something for the first time, like you get quiet. What was the reaction? What was sort of your, and how did it compare to the first one?
I don't remember. I don't remember what my reaction was in the first one, but I'm pretty sure they might have been the same. I start talking gibberish, I cry, I shut down, and then I process. And through the transcourse of the tour, which we find ourselves 13 years later again, emotional beats will come out the more I watch it. So I'm looking forward to watching it again. It was special. It was an experience that I just felt through all my senses. I'm extremely proud of Jim and of the team. I'm just so proud of everybody, and I feel so lucky to be a part of a story that is very compelling.
It's interesting because I was thinking about the evolution of both of your characters, and for you, Sam, I noticed his movements this time around. Like he's more like, I think you've described like a warrior this time around. Last time there was a naivete to when he became big and blue, and this time your body language, everything changed. Can you talk about how you prepared differently or how you keyed into him in a different way?
Well, he's been living with the Na'vi for 10 years, so he's assimilating in a certain way. He's losing his human traits in some respect and becoming more primal. But I think, that's what we wanted. We didn't want to replicate the first movie. You want this whole saga to be this progression of these characters.
Yeah.
And Jake and Natiri's love story is at the center. Now they have the natural progression of that, which is the family. But the characters are going to evolve and keep evolving. That's one of the exciting things about doing these movies, is that we're not just doing carbon copy characters, cut and paste, where Jim wants us to kind of, as Zoe's been saying, work backwards. We know where it's going, so we work backwards to kind of fill in the gaps when we start filming more.
Yeah. Where is each of your Pandora in life? Where's the place on earth that you find magical, otherworldly?
My children. And my husband too. He gets to come too. He's quite lovely. But it's I think it's in bed when my whole family is just sleeping.
You got a big jungle bed?
I know, we do. It's a big bed and we don't even fit. It's 5 of us.
Is there like man-eating plants in there?
I know, but like to hear everybody's breathing is to me is my
like
Pandora.
Scuba?
Yeah. All snoring
That's a weird bedroom you have, man.
No, but that's my haven. That's my safe place.
What about you? Now you have to say
He's
your family.
a sap. His kids
No, everyone knows it's going to be my kids
Yeah.
and my wife. Everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah.
And I heard that you have dad jokes. Trinity says that you have dad jokes.
I'm a
I
dad.
gotta hear those.
Well, I am. Any joke is a dad joke because I am a dad.
Yeah. But I guess he gets to make those jokes around the kids that are not so little anymore. Our cast, our Sully
we realize
children.
all our Sully children have grown bigger.
my
I'm actually the
God.
smallest now. They've all grown way
Oh my
bigger
gosh,
than Jake.
really?
Yeah, way bigger than me. Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of
I'm
amazing.
shrinking. Yeah.
Either you're shrinking or they're real quick. What kind of, I really felt, and you've talked about the family, the connection was so deep in this one. I really felt, are you two having conversations sort of to support each other on set, going like, oh, that was a tough day, or that was like, you two seem so bonded.
You do. Look, the characters are fire, earth. We just happen to be in water. There's an elemental nature to this. And I think when you approach it with that kind of baseness, and then you stop, you have to have a bit of fun and relax and calm. And as an Avatar family, we have that. We have that kind of familiarity and trust in each other to then be operatic in what these scenes demand and be challenging and primal and take it to that, up the ante a bit on what these scenes can do.
Absolutely.
But you have to have that balance,
Yeah. And but also, I'm going to talk about you like you're not here. Sam is not an entitled person. He doesn't get in his own way. He's like a true artist. He allows the process to take over. And he just makes it feel so safe for everybody. There's no ego when you work with Sam. So he's a giver and not a taker, so that compels you to always have his back because he has yours. And I think that we bonded because we were like these kids getting this unimaginable opportunity back in 2006 I mean, he chose us out of like thousands of people that they had sent tapes of. And he felt that, you know, Sam was his Jake and then I was his Neytiri. There was no chance in hell that we were going to take that for granted. I do look up to Sam. Like, there's a level of humility to his character as an artist, as a person too. And that every time I feel a little wobbly, that's kind of like reassuring. So getting to go back to that, and then but you have someone like Jim that is setting such a powerful tone of respect and camaraderie and collaboration, but also of excellence, that it just trickles down to each and every one of us too.
The way of water connects all things. Before your birth and after your death.
You've worked with James before.
Mm-hmm.
He has talked a little bit about how he felt like you had such an affinity to sort of being underwater. He felt like it was like a creative sandbox for you.
It was actually.
Was it?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I felt so comfortable in the water. I mean, I'm unafraid of physical challenge, but certainly this one. I love the water. I love to swim. I'm in and on the water a lot, do cold water swimming. So I know what my body is capable of. But actually I have to say that the process of working under the water was so specific. It was a very finely tuned experience. You know, with Titanic, we dump however many tons of water into a flooding dining room, and there's only so much that you can possibly know about how that water's going to behave around us as actors, around the crew, around the set, you know, pieces of chair and dining tables sliding across the room. So there was always the element of the unknown that was really nerve-wracking for everybody. But with Avatar, everyone knew exactly what to expect. There was a whole system in terms of everyone taking in their final peak inhalation, which is the breath you take before you go under. Everyone knowing how many seconds they had to get down there and get in position. Every camera operator had 2 safety divers. Every actor had 2 safety divers on there. So it was an amazing system. So we all felt just completely free to explore the scenes.
Wow.
So when the acting is supported to such an extent, it's a really magnificent thing, I have to say, and it was very special. It was a really unique, special experience. I loved it.
When you saw your character for the first time, I don't know what part of the process that happened, but how much did it inform you as an actress?
Well, so I saw a lot of graphics, so a lot of just visual material, literally like images on pieces of paper, mock-ups that the designers and the costume designer had worked on together of what I would look like. And it was just exciting and tremendous. I mean, I think the power of her, and that's something I really appreciate about Jim's writing, is that he really celebrates the power of women, the power of mothers, and in particular, that theme of mother. I felt so strongly in the script. And so when I saw my character, I just felt excited, you know, and Jim would describe how her arms were a little bit thicker around here so she could swim faster. The girth of the tail is wider so they can get through the water with greater speed. And I just appreciated all those little attentions that were paid to detail, and I couldn't wait. I just couldn't wait for all of it. And it certainly did, I think, impact on the stature, how I held myself, because I could see his intention for her, what her sort of aura was. And so I definitely was able to take a little bit of that from the visuals that I was shown and hopefully work it into the character.
It's interesting because that was my next question. She had a very specific way of moving. I don't even know if I would call it walking, but moving. How did you come up with that?
Well, there was a movement coach who worked with everybody, and that just helped me, I think, to feel confident with the movement, because you sort of you hold the head back and shoulders are back, but hips are forward, so they sort of lead with the kind of with the stomach and the pelvis, and it's a really interesting way of moving. But actually, Zoe also helped me too, because of course she's so Neytiri, she's so that world.
She is, yeah.
And it was wonderful, her sharing with me and learning from her. And she was so much a part of the voices and the creation of the movement in the early days of the first film. And so to have her experience and to listen and learn from her was really special.
So this year's the 25th anniversary of Titanic. When you look back, and now that you've worked with Jim again, this film is releasing on the 25th anniversary. How has he evolved as a filmmaker? And when you look back on that experience, how do you see it now? Like, what do you feel now when you look back?
I mean,
on
I
that?
think Jim as a filmmaker, I think he's evolved as a filmmaker because he's so much evolved as a person. You know, I think I've hopefully evolved as an actor because I've also evolved as a person, and the things that we experience in our lives, but also through the work that we do and the directors and the actors that we work with, they change who we are and what we can bring into the room. And I look back on the experience of Titanic, and you know, I of course remember how hard it was, how much we all stuck together. But also I really treasure the friendships that we made and the cast and the crew. You know, those are the things that when you can walk away from an experience and look back and remember the really, really great parts. And that for me is what I remember more than anything, is that sense of camaraderie and everyone looking out for each other. But my God, we were in it all together. I mean, Jim and I, you know, we've laughed about things like, oh my God, do you remember how those hydraulics would break? And it would be these supposed tried and tested systems, and every night, you know, something would break or change, and we'd have to wait 3 hours while it was getting fixed. And, you know, it was, yeah, I look back at the kind of haphazard nature of which so many of those things were thrown together, and my goodness, it's a miracle it all came together in the end, but luckily it did.
You broke a record, which everybody's going to be talking about, for holding your breath underwater. Congratulations, 7 minutes,
you.
20 seconds, I think.
7 minutes 14.
I was giving you a few extra.
You were embellishing, that's okay.
What goes through your mind like minute 6? Does you get
I
more
wasn't
calm?
even aware, and actually the previous day, was it the previous day? Maybe 2 days previously, I had done a breath hold that was 6 minutes 14, and I was incredibly proud of myself. And so on that breath hold, I was really determined. That day, I tried to just, you know, get my eating right, get my sort of temperament right, because you do have to calm your whole nervous system down. And actually, how you live, you start to live in certain ways that you know are going to maximize your physical ability and your lung capacity to be able to do it. So that day I was just so quietly determined. And I said to my husband, who was there, I said, oh, please don't come today, because I know that Kirk's going to get me to do another breath hold, and I just really don't want to feel the pressure of you being there. And he was like, okay. But he snuck in. And so I actually have video footage of me coming up, which he was sneakily taking on his phone. So I come up and I go, am I dead? Am I dead? Have I died? Am I dead? Am I dead? And I say, how long was that? Straight away, I'm like, how long was that? I wanted to know right away. And Kirk said, how long do you think it was? And I said, I don't know. It could have been 6:10. It could have been 7:10. I've absolutely no idea. And when he told me it was 7:14, I just scream. I just couldn't believe it. And I'm like, someone radio Jim and let them know. I just smashed my own record. So I was, very proud of myself. But I had no idea what was going on at minute 6. All I was thinking was, don't take a breath, don't take a breath. Just keep going, keep going. I was very proud of myself.
So what does her heartbeat sound like? Mighty.
I've heard a little bit of your reaction, but I'm really curious to know, because it seems like both you and Zoe are having such a deep, visceral experience with watching it. Can you sort of break down how you felt watching it and compare it to when you saw the first film?
I love the first film. It has an amazing story, and it introduces us to Neytiri and her world, and it's so powerful and so moving and romantic. This, to me, was not a movie. It was an experience, and from the moment it starts, I felt like, even though I play a member of the family, I felt like a member of the family, and I was completely committed to whatever was going on with us. It was just a seamless transition to being in Pandora, and at every level, technologically and emotionally, story-wise, it has you. It's like a big animal that grabs you and just holds you for 3 hours, and then lets you go. And I'm still assimilating the experience, because I'd never, I had hoped that Kiri would work, but it was a big risk that Jim took, and really that I took, and I was so delighted and relieved to see that Kiri is the special character we wanted to create.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because the last time we spoke about this, I hadn't seen the film, and you talked about Kiri being very special. She is so unique. Her movements, she's awkward in her movements. I want to know how you as an actress on set, like how you sort of got into her body and made her, and I think that was sort of a suggestion of yours maybe, to make her feel a little more awkward and not so perfect.
Yes. When I saw the sketches of Carrie, she had a little band on her head, and she's very Neytiri-like, very composed and pretty. And I said to Jim, you know, I don't remember feeling like that. I would never have dreamed of being as pretty as my mother or as capable. You know, I took a long time to sort of cook. So that period of time for me is very, very vivid. And I just felt like for a lot of women, a lot of girls, that's not a perfectly happy time. Of course, there are great moments of great happiness and fun, but there are also moments where you just want to disappear and you just feel things are so unjust. And so I wanted that to be part of her story. I thought, how can it not be? Because of what happens to the family. She's pulled from this absolute wonderland, this golden childhood into this new world, and loses her best friend, and you know. So I just felt like it was a complicated time for all of them, but especially for someone who's an adolescent.
How did you develop those movements of her? But like, was that something that just sort of came? Did you work on that a lot?
Well, I did, because luckily the shooting kept being postponed. So I realized early on that I didn't want to play a teenager. I wanted to become a teenager, and very specifically, the Kiri teenager. So I would get on the set every day, and I'd worked on this before we started shooting, just trying to get back to the body I felt I was in when I was 14. And I'd go and stand off in the corner, and I would just try to let all of Sigourney go and just be really who was Susie, you know, and she didn't even like her name. So, you know, and just drop everything away. And actually what amazes me, like when I said to Sam at one point, I said, you deserve an acting award for being able to do scenes with me and believe that I'm 14. He said, it just dropped away from you every time we were doing a scene. And I was so amazed by that, and frankly so heartened by that.
Yeah. You've talked about your relationship with Jim, that you have a very playful relationship. I'm wondering, when you were in the tank and he's able to give you notes and sort of like talk over a loudspeaker or however that you can hear him, what are sort of like the funny notes or fun conversations, not conversations you can't speak back, but what are sort of some funny dialogue he was giving you as you were filming those scenes? Was it as playful as I'm imagining it was?
I think yes. I mean, yes, he's always playful. I think there was so much going on for him. And he would say, you know, before we would shoot a scene, try to come up above. There was like this much plastic white balls over the whole surface of the tank. Excuse me. So that to keep out the reflections. So when they said cut, and you had to wait for your safety divers who would swoop in and kind of lift you back up to the surface, because I was wearing weights and stuff. I wouldn't have made it without them. You had to hold your breath long enough to pass that 3 inches of little balls. And Jim would always say, try not to swallow a ball as you come up, you know, things like that.
I'm a warrior like you. I'm supposed to fight. Protect the people.
This is an extraordinary role. You were unbelievable in this role.
You mean you didn't believe me?
We talked the last time. No, I believed you, but seeing is believing, right? What I found really interesting, and a lot of people, you have such a fandom. People love you and love this character. So excited, but the big question was like, how does he come back? Mm-hmm. How did you find out how this was going to be possible? I know that you've worked with James over the years. Mm-hmm. You've been collaborators, but when did you first find out?
Well, I knew I would be back. How I would be back, I didn't know. But, you know, when people say, but how could he come back? Didn't you die? You know, nobody says it better than Jim Cameron. He'd kind of look and he'd say, it's called science fiction. Duh. You know.
I hope you're not saying that to me right now.
No, not no.
Okay. I'm just the messenger.
No. But anyway, it was when I suspected all along that it had something to do with my DNA. You know, knowing RDA the way I do, I knew that, you know, of course they'd bank my DNA. Look, Quaritch represents, it's a calculation, it's a cold equation to them that I'm an investment to them, and it costs them zero to bank the DNA. And if they run the numbers and say, is it worth it bringing this guy back? You know, he did a pretty good job until things went south on him. But that's really not entirely his fault, although some of it's his fault. Anyway, yeah, let's bring the son of a gun back, and we'll send him up there again, and you know, see if we can get this thing solved.
You just played a whole new character.
I know, that's an RDA, some wonk at RDA, some business dude, right there. And I think that I think it was as simple as that.
Yeah.
The decision.
So you get the big and blue treatment in this film. Yeah. And I was watching your character wondering, what is Quaritch feeling? Because he always wants to be bigger than he is, right? And now he physically is. So what does that do for you as an actor when all of a sudden you're playing this character? Like, how did it inform how he moved, how he talked in this film versus the last one?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you say he always wants to be bigger. I'd have to examine. I'm going to accept it as maybe it's true. He wants to be as big as he possibly can. He takes up a lot of space, Quaritch. He tends to dominate the room, even if he's not saying anything, just his presence. You know, he's a true leader in that way, and that's the strength, and I think it's one of the things that people kind of respond to in him. And of course, when he becomes an Avatar, he's learned some lessons. He's not a stupid man by any means. And if he, by being one way, it ended up with 2 arrows in his chest, maybe it's time to make an adjustment in how he is dealing with the environment and with the denizens of that environment. And I think he becomes you know, pretty adept at doing that. We see him starting on the journey and going a long way in Avatar: Way of Water. He's adapting to to Pandora rather than trying to make Pandora adapt to him.
Speaking of adapting, in the last one you're human, in this one you're doing a lot of mocap. Compare for me as an actor, being in the mocap working opposite humans versus being a human working opposite mocap. How do you compare that? Did I just blow your mind?
yeah, I'm trying to, look, performance capture is, it's challenging. Working, and I will tell you that working in performance capture with working with live action human, it's difficult because of scale. Because understand that if I'm acting in a scene, say with Edie Falco, who plays General Ardmore in this, she's a human in this, and I'm an Avatar. Well, if Edie and I are standing next to each other acting, and I'm supposed to be looking at her, I really have to look down at her kneecap in order to make eye contact with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? It's like, because the scale is, because I'm actually, 14 or 12 feet tall. And so that, I know this is kind of a little wacky to talk about. It's hard to talk about. And when we're on set and Jim is kind of figuring it out, too, it can get a little like, so where do you want me to look? Okay. So that's challenging. That's just flat out technically challenging and be difficult to do. But that's the circumstances we work under, and you have no alternative but to make it into a positive.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it becomes such. It's all a question of approach.
Yeah, I know. I heard you say something about, like, you turn challenges into, like, obstacles into, like, a resource to, like...
If you can. I mean, I think that's a good... I think, makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
If you can.
I'm going to get really specific, but I know actors who are great love I can never say the word.
Specificity.
The way you hold the coffee cup or whatever you have, I remembered the first film. Was that a choice as an actor? Were you like, I want to have that cup, and there's something about the way he holds it. It's very like, and you talked about right angles the last time we talked.
Yeah, exactly.
Was that a choice that you made, or was that always in the script?
I think it's an organic choice. I mean, I would probably look at the monitor and see if I liked the way I was, leaning there, possibly, or it just felt right, or Jim said, I like that, that's good, lift it a little higher, or whatever. It can be any number of things, but I know the coffee cup was important. I wasn't initially pleased with the coffee cup itself. I had wanted something different. I wanted something metallic, and I wanted steam coming off it, and that didn't happen. It's like, I remember saying, We're in New Zealand. Are there no coffee cups in New Zealand? To our wonderful prop man, I don't want to diss anybody, but it worked out good. Apparently, the coffee cup was memorable enough. So
I'm glad I brought it up.
the coffee
It's
cup.
actually something
I
that I-
saw that Edie had a coffee cup in this one. General Ardmore is having a
yeah.
cup of coffee.
She wants to be
as
just
well.
like you.
How about that?
How about that? I talked about the fandom a little bit earlier on, but have you experienced that? Do people come up to you and talk to you about what Quaritch? Because people love him. He's a villain.
Occasionally, occasionally I do. I mean, you get people from all kinds. I get them from Tombstone a lot. I love Tombstone. Or I get it from Don't Breathe. Weird, My fan base is, they're a strange group, but very, very good.
Do you know when they walk up which film they're going to cite?
You know what? That's a great question. Sometimes I do. You kind of judge, and sometimes they'll surprise you.
I need you with me. And I need you to be strong. Strong-heart.
Back when you did the first Avatar film in 2009, we all connected with it, obviously the highest grossing film of all time, but there was a very deep connection people had to it, something you called the tertiary level.
Yeah,
What
okay,
was-
so you've done your research. That's great, yeah.
What did you experience on a tertiary level that made you want to continue the story and dedicate 10 years of your life to?
Well, I felt that the unequivocal success of the movie was some kind of subconscious connection that people were making around the world. And it actually gave me hope. There was a message that was, thematically it was about the environment, about nature, about our connection to nature that we all feel, even though we live in this kind of state of nature deficit disorder, which we all do, or most of us do, unless you're still, on a farm or you get to be a forest ranger or some damn thing like that, But I thought that, okay, so we have evidence now from the success of this film that people want to connect. They feel some kind of subconscious connection to these ideas and these images. All right, now, how do we do that again? And how do we build on that? And we literally wrote a whole script that I wasn't happy with. I didn't think it did it. And we chucked it out. It was about a year's work. We chucked it out and started over because I wanted that subconscious connection that's almost dreamlike, right? And I wanted to awaken that, kind of sense memory of maybe in this film of being in water or underwater, or that yearning that we have to see a primeval world like that. Because, there was a time when human beings lived in a primeval world and they were relatively happy for hundreds of thousands of years. And then they invented our modern civilization and things kind of went a little bit pear-shaped, right? So it's meant to be kind of a reminder of the stuff that's deeply coded inside us. And I'd like to hope that we accomplish that again in a different way, so it's new, it's fresh, it's a new story, new challenges, all that sort of
I
thing.
feel like in a sense you're a Metcaina yourself.
Well,
with all your
maybe. Well, I do like the water. I
Yeah.
do like being underwater,
Yeah.
sure.
So
So there's
speaking-
a reverence, right? There's a
Right.
reverence for the ocean. There's a reverence for what the Na'vi call the great balance. For me, it's just the awe and wonder of what's really there. What I call it nature's imagination.
Wow. So speaking of that technology in that modern world that you talked about, I think when people talk about your films, they always say James Cameron waited for the technology to catch up to his vision. That's something we hear over and over and over again.
Yeah.
But for you, what was something that you weren't able to do in 2009 because the technology didn't exist or you hadn't created it yet that gave you particular joy to be able to bring to this film?
Yeah, the difference for the new film was that previously I was just waiting for the rising tide to lift all ships together so that then we could come in and we could build on top of it to create what we needed for the first Avatar. And it was all very prototypical and so on. The whole movie was a prototype. But we learned from that, and then when we set down the path of doing these new sequels, we actually, in a very focused way, built the new tools that we needed. We didn't wait. We didn't wait for the industry at large to do it for us. We knew what we needed, and we went after it. And a big focus was how do we create literally a perfect translation of what the actors are doing into their characters. Their characters aren't human. Their bodies are different. Their faces are different. How do we make sure that what the actor does gets there 100% with no loss whatsoever. And then a lot of money and a lot of time went into that, and I think we've accomplished that, because when you see, whether it's Sam, Zoe, Sigourney, Kate Winslet, you feel them even when they're not talking. You feel what they're feeling and what they're thinking. It's all there 100%. And so we're very happy with that, and now that's the base from which we can move forward through these other films, if we get to make the other films, obviously.
It's interesting because you do experience it on that level. People talked about the first Avatar, how it was groundbreaking, they'd never seen anything like it. I felt that watching this again. I felt like I'd seen something I'd never seen before.
That's good. That was our goal.
Because you are always thinking forward. Is there a piece of technology that you're now working on for the future, whether it be a future Avatar film or something you hope exists in the future, that maybe whether it be Avatar or another film that you would...
I don't think there's anything that we need that we don't have now. We gave ourselves all the hard problems in this movie, water being the hardest problem, but water, fire, everything, the emotional stuff. So we gave ourselves all the hard problems on purpose so that we now don't have, so now the cadence of the films can be shorter. Like we plan to drop the next one in 2 years, and then after that another couple of years, 2 or 3 years. You see what I mean? So we don't have to create it all from scratch anymore. Where my focus is to promote better exhibition, right? So the 3D is great, but not all 3D theaters are bright enough for my standard. You know, you got to see it in a nice bright theater, but they're not all bright enough. And you know, some people don't like 3D because the theatrical technology has lagged behind what we can do. You know, you saw it in its most pristine form. So yeah, my emphasis is on getting kind of the infrastructure out there up to the level that it can be.
Where do you see 13 years since the last film? If you jump forward 13 years from now, how do you think we're going to be experiencing movies?
I think it'll be fairly similar to what it is right now. I mean, there's something, you know, my biggest challenges on this film were not technological. They were dramatic. They were narrative. You know, what are we trying to say? What's the story that we're trying to tell? Because people are mostly interested in story. Then when they go to see a movie, they don't want to know like what kind of camera was used, really. You know, they just want, like, do I care about this character? Is it funny? Is it dramatic? Does it make me cry? Does it make me feel something, right? So that storytelling challenge will always be there.
Yeah.
And if the medium changes, it doesn't really matter. You know, the big question right now is the to be or not to be question. Does the theatrical experience mean enough to human civilization to keep it alive in a time of rapid access to content? You know, it's like a fire hose coming at you right now, as all these different streamers are spending so much money to create so much interesting content with good actors and good writing and all that. But can that sustain itself? I think we're seeing the signs that it can't, not at the level that it is right now. And we see people coming back to the theater because they want that, you know, whether it's the communal experience. I think of it more as the experience where you make a deal with yourself to not pick up the remote for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's I'm just going to focus on that and let it, you know, bathe me in this story and in these people. You know, and you don't do that at home. You know, it's just a fundamentally different experience. You pause it, you go make a phone call or order a pizza or text somebody, or, you know, it's a divided attention, or you watch it in bits.
I just asked Kate, 25 years since Titanic, to reflect on you as a filmmaker, how you've evolved. When you look back on that experience now, having so much distance from it, are you able to watch it how do you see it looking back? And what is it about you? Because both films, you're an epic filmmaker. What quality do you think you have that allows you to be an epic filmmaker?
Well, look, I'm an artist, right? So I think in kind of these moving paintings, if you will. You know, I love production value. I love spectacle, physical spectacle, whether it's done virtually or whether it's done with physical sets. But I think that's necessary but not sufficient, right? I think what you also need is a deep concern for the characters. In the writing stage, you've got to love your characters, and then you've got to find the right actors to play those characters, and you've got to love your actors, and you've got to care about them, you know, and work with them and support them to do their very best work. I had a great working relationship with Kate and Leonardo on Titanic. I think, you know, for these young actors where they were established. They had done some great work, but they had a lot of challenges on that film, and I'm proud of what we created together. You know, I'm proud of Kate having gone on to the stellar career that she's had. It was great for us to reunite and celebrate each other. You know, that we're now, you know, kind of 25 years down the line, we've made our bones in the business, you know, and we could relax and have fun. And it was a challenging role for her physically, right, because of the water and all that. But she loved that, you know, because she's the kind of actor that just loves a physical challenge or anything to do with dialect or language. I mean, it basically was everything for her, you know, because she loves the sound of dialect and the sound of language. She had to learn some Na'vi. She does a couple scenes in Na'vi. There's no reason for that, right? Because the conceit of the whole movie is that everybody's speaking Na'vi, but we're hearing it in English, like a bunch of World War II Germans, you know, that all speak with English accents for some reason. You know, that's the conceit of the film. But when she does her kind of shamanistic practice, we went into Na'vi. Well, maybe it's an archaic form of Na'vi that's part of their ceremony or something like that. You know. Anyway, it was great working with her again.
Treat them as our brothers and sisters. Teach them our ways.
What was the moment that both of you were like, I'm in an Avatar movie?
Literally when we watched it for the first time
Really,
yesterday.
I was gonna say.
It didn't hit until like the 20th Century Fox started, and I was just
Same.
like, oh, this is happening. Holy crap. You know?
I know. When the 20th Century came on and they went da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da.
Chills.
It just, yeah, chills. Adrenaline through the veins.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see yourselves, Big and Blue, or in whatever iteration that you are, do you see yourselves, or do you see the character, or do you see both? Like, is it weird to see yourself in it? Both.
I'd say both. I see more myself because I also judge my own performance, you know, as an actor, but I also see the character, but yeah, both.
When watching the stuff that I've done, I also tend to sometimes, you know, you're your own worst critic often.
Yeah.
And, but seeing this, I think in this movie, there's just so much to take in, and I'm trying to take all of it in. And Took, I just, just have so much love in my heart whenever I look at my little Took. And she does have my separated teeth, like buck teeth from when I was 8 years old, and my peanut body from then. So it's I love her.
Did you get braces? No.
Invisalign.
Invisalign.
Nice. I noticed your laugh in the movie. Like, your laugh just was like so, you were like the lightness in a sense in the film.
Thank you so much.
Did you note? Were you aware? Like, was Jim giving you notes, or was that a natural thing that that you were just impromptu laughing?
I guess it's just kind of Took and her personality, and she's kind of always trying to find the positivity and the beauty of what's happening in this film and what's happening to the Sullys and everything. But I think, Jim, there's this scene when they arrive at the Metkayina village, and of course it goes from Took really missing home to also kind of exploring this new home that they have and jumping up and down and going nyar, nyar, nyar. And I remember that day that when I was just jumping up and down, Jim and I were trying to figure out what sound Took might do. And we ended up, then Jim wondered to himself, what would a Pandoran kangaroo sound like? And then we just kind of like played around with what Took thought a Pandoran kangaroo sound like, and I guess Pandoran kangaroos to Took sound like nyar nyar. But
oh my gosh,
it's just Jim's such an amazing director, and really through that we got to discover Took's inner monologue and stuff like that. So.
And for you, I mean, Spider's motions are insane. Like, I was like, how is a human doing that? Because sometimes when you see the Avatar bodies, you understand how they can move like that. But can you talk a little bit about how you prepared as an actor to be so immersive? I mean, that was incredible.
I did a lot of training. I did same training as them with like parkour, knife training, movement training, bow and arrow training, but also I worked with the stunt guys, and I got my own trainer.
Nice.
And Josh Murillo, who I worked with for 4 years, still work with to this day, actually. And he helped me go from like a pudgy 12-year-old to someone who looked like they could, you know, actually live in the jungle.
Someone with muscle.
Swole, yeah. And yeah, no, it was it was just like a lot of training for especially specific shots where I'm like running and doing parkour to look like I've been doing it my whole life, and yeah, a lot of choreography.
I heard something, I think you said before, that Sam tells dad jokes. And it's so funny because when I think of Sam kind of like from Avatar 1. And it's so funny that you see him like, oh, he's like a dad. So what were his dad jokes that you were talking about?
Well, it's funny that you say that because also me, having watched Avatar so many times before I met Sam, I expected to be meeting a Jake-like person and like that he'd be very serious and heroic, but actually Sam is very just nurturing and fun and tells good dad jokes.
He does. So they're good jokes.
Yes.
Because sometimes dad jokes are bad jokes, right?
I mean, if dad jokes are bad, that's kind of why they're good, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but his dry delivery really brings it home. You know?
Especially when he says, "What, the hot dog?"
He said that?
Yeah.
Cute. I know before you started filming, James took a lot of the cast to Hawaii to sort of do like, feel the sand in your feet. Can you kind of walk me through, how does that feel when like James is like your ultimate tour guide in Hawaii, telling you to like smell the smells and feel the feels? Like what does that feel like?
It was cool because I think I had just booked the role like a week prior, and then he was like, "You're flying out to Hawaii." I was like, "Okay." So me and my mom went to Hawaii, and we went to like the ocean the first official day. And some of the cast scuba dived, and I didn't have my scuba license, so I just like snorkeled, and I spent like 4 hours straight in the ocean. And then when I went back up on the little not ship but boat, I immediately got seasick and threw up.
No way.
Yeah, I felt really sick, and I was like, ugh, and then and I was like hanging off the side of the boat, and Jim came up to me swimming. He was like, "Hey, buddy, how's your first day at Navi summer camp?" And I was like, "It's great, Jim." Like. So, yeah.
Hope he wasn't swimming in your throw up.
No, I threw up and they all came to watch the fish feed off of it.
No.
Yeah, it's true. It's like
I'm getting such a visual now.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
It's gross but kind of cool.
It's kind of amazing. So I never like to ask this question because I know actors don't necessarily give actors advice. Mm-hmm. But I heard Kate say she actually liked giving the younger cast advice. Yeah. So was that something that happened? And there was also a swear jar. So on the two ends of the spectrum, who was giving the advice? Who was doing the swearing?
I feel like Sam gave me plenty of advice, but also did plenty of swearing, you know?
Yeah. As the founders of the Swear Jar, we can definitely say Sam was a primary contributor.
Yes. But also Sam he was really good at giving advice and was always there for me.
Yeah.
And he was very, into the scene and would help me get into the scene emotionally and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
We really got to learn from the adult cast, and they're all so supportive and just fun, kind, and definitely we got to get lots of advice. I remember one day when I was kind of nervous about this one scene, and Sig came up to me and just kind of made me feel really confident and prepared for it. And it's just to watch them do their stuff and kind of get to learn from them that way too.
I mean, just watch them perform in itself is an honor.
Where's your Pandora? Where on this earth is your personal haven, your personal Pandora?
Well, first, if Pandora were a real place, it would be top of my bucket list.
Yeah.
But I guess we get to go there in the theater, you know?
Yeah. There's a place there's like a glacier lake in the South Island of New Zealand, which is beautiful. But also my home of the mountains of Appalachia is also really beautiful. So, yeah. I think the mountains of Appalachia, I'd say that's my home.
There's still a lot of beautiful places that I'd love to see one day and explore, and a lot of Pandoras I guess I'd love to explore. But I guess right now, just wherever my family and my friends and people I love are. That's my Pandora.
We cannot let you bring your war here.
Outcast. That's all they see.
I see you.
First, I wanted to ask you, is it true that you all went to Hawaii sort of for like a pre-production trip to sort of get your senses? Because you're going to be in a tank and you're going to be shooting where you don't sort of have all the elements. What is that trip like? Is like summer camp, is Jim giving you like, like, okay, look at the tree, feel the sand. How does that go?
Yes, well, I think you put it perfectly. It was like a pre-production training situation, especially because we were doing so much training in the volume and in this gray space. And then we go to Hawaii, and for me personally, at that time, I've never been out of the States. So I've barely been on the West Coast. being from New York. So being able to go to Hawaii, which feels like its own place outside of anywhere, like just its own island, which it literally, is. And because of that, we were able to immerse ourselves. Even like feeling, Jim would be like, feel the sand, feel the creatures around you, the reefs, being able to scuba dive and go deep into the water. All of that really helped. You never forget those moments, even as just a regular person not doing acting in a volume. Right. But to be able to have that and then go into the volume just expanded the whole acting process.
I think James must be the ultimate camp counselor in a sense. He's like the ultimate tour guide. I was wondering for you guys, when you see yourselves given the Big and Blue treatment, do you see yourselves or do you see a different character? Like when you watch yourselves and saw yourselves for the first time, is it like, oh, that's me? Or do you feel like you're watching something outside yourself?
We've talked about this a lot, haven't we? Because I personally, as an actor, love like transcendent quality of acting, and if you go into a cinema and don't have to look at yourself, then that's extremely forgiving and kind of everything why I like to do it, to experience something outside of yourself.
Yeah, well, it's the same with any character I play. If I don't see myself, I did a good job. So I see Bailey like that. Those are my dimples. Those are my teeth. My cheekbones added to the shape of Soraya. So it is my body the same way it is when I do live action. But if we did our jobs as actors, which I really feel we did, we shouldn't feel ourselves. And
Continue going. This is like a
no,
this is like
I was on such
gesture.
a good roll,
I know.
and you just had to be self-deprecating.
I know.
He does a great job. That's how you know he did a great job, because he's being self-deprecating, and that's a fact.
God, that's horrible then. So maybe self-deprecation is just like a reevaluation for me to get a compliment.
Yeah.
That works.
This is getting deep. I didn't even mean to use a pun. It
This
happened.
is working, man.
No, we love that.
It just ultimately happened. So is there anything, and maybe you do experience this, is there anything, a mannerism, something you didn't realize that you had until you saw yourself in this sort of way?
I didn't realize how much my smile impacted people. Because my whole life, like, people would always say, like, oh my gosh, your smile, your brightness and all of that. And seeing Soraya's smile, and I think it's just because that's everything that she is in this movie, like her overall kindness. And when people ask me to describe her, I say kind, but I did not realize how like infectious my own kindness as Bailey and my own smile is on others until it transformed into performance capture.
There's also this one scene in the film where you do like a sad smile as well.
There's variations.
There's variations on the smile. It's a dynamic smile. But
Jim,
that was actually really sad.
But Jim cares so much about those details, and he would go into every scene explaining it in great depth. And because of that, we get those variations of what a person is. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of this movie, is how specific every character is.
Yes, very much so. And I love that you were self-deprecating and you reflected the question back to her instead of answering about your own mannerisms.
Oh, there you go, yeah. Would you like me?
You don't have to.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Yeah.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
And this works for your character, not so much for because you're Metkayina, so you're used to being in the water.
Yeah.
But there are moments where you're supposed to be, a couple of your characters are sort of like needing a breath. And you sort of do that gesture of like, when we all know we're underwater and we're running out of breath. How do you actually do that on the day so that we're not seeing bubbles? Like, how are you acting that out as an actor?
You've literally just reminded me about a very strict note from Jim and the diving team, which I completely forgot about, which is, if we did allow bubbles to leave, it would go in front of the camera and we'd completely mess up their shot.
So it's something that freedivers use to communicate underwater. Yeah, it is. It's something we learned in training, and and that's what you do.
But also, because I know the scenes you're referring to, and what I love about those scenes and why the actors that do, without giving too much away, the actors that have to act, that they're running out of breath, it's such a natural instinct that actually, that's why I feel like it's so evocative. I've definitely done that in scenes where I wasn't meant to be doing that. So, yeah.
Well, also the number one fear in humans, or like one of our top 10 fears, is drowning. So naturally, even when we're going into training, we have to learn to not be afraid of drowning.
Should we get consensus on that? Are we all afraid to drown?
Yeah. Oh my God,
1,000%.
I've almost drowned so many times that I'm grateful for Avatar training now.
Now you know you'll be fine.
Yeah.
What was the moment? I know that there was when you were in the tank. I keep calling it the tank, but when Jim was able to talk with you, what was sort of like the funniest note or like something that he shouted out that you're like, I'm so in an Avatar film right now with James.
Oh, there's probably too much to remember.
I have one.
Go for it, yeah.
So we have to wear goggles you can't. Jamie was the only actor that did scenes without goggles and a nose clip, and I was like, this person is superhuman because we're like diving deep and having to equalize. So he would just go quickly, equalize with his nose, right, and then go down.
Yeah,
and
my
how'd
eyes
you
got
do
very
it?
red though. It wasn't good. Very
No,
clear
but
and modern,
that's not true because Jim was very grateful for that because then they didn't have to remove the nose clip and goggles while filming, while they were doing the performance capture. So I would say the weirdest thing was Jim asked me, he's like, so can you do it without the goggles and nose clip? And I'm just like, when does this happen where like we're wearing all these extra things that no one will ever see?
What was the moment that both of you were just like, was it watching the film for the first time or you're like, wow, I'm actually in an Avatar movie, like this is insane?
I don't, because this is only obviously from the actor's experience. This has nothing to do with what the audience are going to go through.
Yeah.
But we've had so much time in between filming it and actually seeing the film that actually all of my inner introspection over like the film process has already sort of happened before we saw the film, and there was an amazing like distance away from the process, away from being an actor in the film when watching it. I'd say that final day of finally wrapping on set.
Really?
Yeah. Because it had been such a formative and almost weirdly insular environment because we only had like 5 of us to rely on as growing up with each other in LA, an alien world to a lot of us, and no offense. And
and then no, because most of us were not from LA, so we were like, this is like a whole new place. But I think for me, it was watching the film yesterday and seeing, anytime I see my credit on a film, it like makes me bawl because, I worked very hard to get where I am now, and the nose, like, I don't think people understand the amount of nose, not getting even a call back. So to be able to see Saraya Bailey Bass in the credits, I hope that never gets old, and I don't think it ever will.
If you want to live here, you have to ride.
Let's do it.
Just breathe. Breathe.
I don't know how you and your work spouse, James, managed to keep innovating. And after Avatar, people said they saw something they'd never seen before. You managed to do it again. And you've shot several films back to back now. So how do you continue with the technology to innovate, knowing that some of these films won't get released until a few years from now?
We kid ourselves knowing that we're in this for the long haul, that we're going to know how to do Avatar 2 the day we finish it. And then that's going to be the foundation for us to push for Avatar 3. And we won't know how to make Avatar 3 until we're done with Avatar 3. And we always continue to push. And we have partners like Joe Letteri, who's the senior visual effects supervisor at WetFX. Yeah. No one wants to rest on the laurels of their past. What is possible? And in some ways, what I get excited about is I think that what we do unlocks the door for other filmmakers to tell stories that could not otherwise be told at a better level. And what we want to do is we want to show audiences something that they go, I can't get that anywhere else. I have to see it on the big screen. I have to be immersed in that world, and we want to continue to do that with each of the sequels.
Is it going to take every filmmaker, though, 10 years? Because it really is, it's a million pieces put together. What is sort of like some technology? I know you have so much technology, and you sort of waited for the technology to catch up to before making the sequel. That's why it took so long. But what is something that wasn't available to the film in 2009 that particularly gave you joy to bring to this one?
First of all, what took the time initially in our gap was writing the scripts. It wasn't the technology. It was creating 4 scripts that would all work as standalone movies, but together create a larger epic saga. And that took 4 years to get to that point. And then we had to design that world. I think the technology that we focus on the most might be one that surprises you. It's the facial performance. It's being able to get performances that transform these characters where you just go, they're real. Did they put them in makeup? How did they do that? Movies are about close-ups. Movies are not about the worlds you create around them. The hardest technical challenge for a company like WetFX on this is the water. We all know what water looks like. So you can't just sit there and go, oh, make it look good. You have to make it look photoreal. And one of the best compliments I had from somebody said, okay, John, I know that the Na'vi characters aren't real, but where did you shoot those scenes of the beautiful water? We didn't. WetFX did that, and that's what's amazing.
That's what's amazing. But didn't you use some extra some technology you didn't have on the first one, even for the eyes?
We advance everything, and we continue to do that. So on the first film, we recorded people's performances with a single standard definition camera. On these movies, we're using 2 high-definition cameras. We get a much higher fidelity of facial performance. Weta, on their back end, went to a deep learning technology where we put the cast into this sort of volume where they went through all these facial expressions, and the systems learned that, and it learned how to interpret when they got the data, not based on the skin, but based on the muscles. Because what creates what we do with our faces are the muscles inside. We're not moving our skin, we're moving the muscles on the inside, and that's what Weta has now solved.
Wow. Jim has said 3 films. That's what he has said. I know you've shot, I think, a quarter of 4. How have you thought about how, by the time they come out, the release strategy, how people are going to experience them? Are we going to get more maybe virtual reality? And like we got Pandora with the last one. Are you exploring that right now?
I think what we're exploring is outside of the theater, how to expand the IP. Pandora, the World of Avatar at Walt Disney World still is their highest rated attraction down there, I'm proud to say. We're looking to do it in publishing. We're looking to do it in gaming, where we have a game that we're doing with Ubisoft, which is going to be this fabulous multiplayer game, not retelling the story of our movie, because we do that. We want these opportunities to be the best in their field and play in the sandbox that is Pandora and these characters. And as we do the movies, our plan still is to do, a total of 4 sequels, a total of 5 movies.
In the theater.
In the theater.
Yeah.
And, and we think that, we have a responsibility to help preserve this experience that we all love called the cinema. And it's had a rough couple of years, with the pandemic. But, movies like Maverick, movies like Black Panther, movies even like Spider-Man, show that people want it when you deliver them something. And if there was one movie, I believe, that was ever made to be seen in a movie theater, it's Avatar: The Way of Water.
What about Alita Battle Angel? The fans out there want to know from you, are we going to get more of that universe?
To the fans out there who want to know about Alita Battle Angel, Robert and I were just discussing that a couple weeks ago. So let's see where we go with it.